people do like flashy stuff on Instagram to kind of grab your attention. And I just thought, I like groovy bass lines, repetitive 2-bar, 4-bar phrases. So it was a impulsive decision on January 1st where I just said, I'm going to do this for a whole year.
Hi guys, so we've got a super special guest on with us today, the beautiful and incredible Ian Trusheim, who I actually think, I don't know about Ian if we've had this conversation before, the first time that I saw you, I think it was on Instagram. It might have been on YouTube actually, thinking about it now. Back in the day, can you remember like there was no beard, there was like maybe a little more hair than I've got. And there was a P bass and it was like shot in this beautiful like warehouse. Can you remember that video?
Yeah, of course. The song was called Stair Steps.
Was that what it was? Yeah. So guys, you should definitely check this out after. Obviously watch this interview first, but go check it out because it's beautiful. Ian's playing this amazing P bass and then he starts singing at the end like an angel, I might add. Like an angel. I can remember watching that video. I don't think we've ever talked about this. I can remember watching this video and I was like, oh man, this guy's great. He's a great player. And then suddenly halfway through, you just start beautifully singing and I was like, oh my, I was like, he's off the Christmas card list. He can sing that great as well. I was like, do you sing still or not? Is it something you do?
I like singing. I mean, I'm not, I'd like to be better at it and have more opportunities to sing and play. I struggle singing and playing, to be honest. So it's something I need to work on.
It's a bass thing, isn't it? It's like the percussiveness or maybe the syncopation thing of the bass is like, it's wacky well, at least it is for me. I
feel the same way. It's like I could sing long tones and play syncopated, or I could play long tones and sing a syncopation, but I can't, can't pat my head and rub my belly.
Yeah, me neither. Anyway, all that to say that we've got Ian on this week, and the reason I reached out to him a couple of weeks ago, I've been a long-time stalker of Ian over on, you should definitely go follow him on Instagram, Ian Trusheim. It's spelled Trusheim. Is that correct, Ian?
You got it.
God for that. Okay, boom. First time. Yeah, go follow him on Instagram because he posts these incredible bass lines. In fact, this is kind of like why we wanted to do this podcast because, as I said, I've been a long time follower of Ian's. And how confusing is it, by the way, that you're called Ian as well? Yeah. Yeah, sorry for everybody. You're like, Ian, which Ian? Anyway, long time follower. And then not so long ago, you started doing this thing called the 365-day baseline challenge, so Ian was creating a brand new 2-bar bass line every single day, and the challenge was to do it for 365 days. How long did you actually do? It was
over 200. I think it was maybe 210 or 211. And then I had to hang up the hat for a little bit, and we could get into that, but it was amazing. It was a wild ride.
Like what? Well, I want to know like about your baseline creation process because I think that it's one of them things that should be and is endlessly interesting for bass players because there's so many options and you can be really, really creative. And I think by what you did, well, just from a sort of like marathon perspective, that you're going to do it for hundreds and hundreds of these in a row is outrageously, you aimed high, but just like the quality of the playing and the quality of the tracks you were playing along with and the quality, frankly, of the bass lines that you were creating as well. Just every time I listened to one, I was like, God damn, this guy's awesome.
Oh man.
So yeah. So what I thought I'll do is I've got like maybe like 3 or 4 of these clips from Instagram to share. So if you're watching this on YouTube, game on. If you're just listening to it, obviously you'll hear the audio, but you might want to go to YouTube so you can see Ian in action playing his bass. Lovely. We'll talk about that bass in a minute. You're actually holding it 66, is it?
That's right.
Oh yeah, we're going to go down that rabbit hole. Anyways, I'm going to play a couple of these clips and then it'd be great to talk about your creative process and what it was like to do hundreds of these in a row. So with that said, here's the first one. Check it out. Oh, Yeah. Come on, dude. Come on. There's this one as well. Oh, this one's incredible. I love this one because you're playing with a pick in this one. It's just got like a great little vibe to it at the beginning. Oh. By the way, you should turn all of these into like an album. I don't know if I've actually did I message you the other week and say that? I didn't. No, I've thought about it a lot. Every time I listen to a few of these, I'm like, this needs to kind of like be a thing. You definitely need to, you need to like put something together to play some of these because they're just so good. Finally, let me show you this. By the way, is this like a blast from the past, like for you watching these? Are you like, oh, I remember doing that?
Yeah, it's a trip. That's the easiest way I can explain it. It's wild. Yeah.
Check this one out. This one's really cool. Woo! Dude, you need to do something with these. Before we even get into the stuff, like how you must have, like, I want to know, like, did you batch them? What the hell was it like to do hundreds of these in a row? But before we even get to that, from a technical standpoint, like, how were you making these tracks? Were you putting them together? Like, yeah, what were you doing?
I mean, I'm using Logic.
Yeah.
For that first video, that's a great drummer, George Slupik, that I love. He's in Nashville now, and he just posts videos of him playing the drums, and he does this hashtag play what you love. And that was really inspiring to me. And I started ripping his drum audio and just putting that in Logic and then building from that. And, sometimes starting with the bass line and then overdubbing piano, guitar, vocals, all those things. Or maybe I'm hearing the drums and I'm hearing a melody and I'm kind of laying down the backing track, if we want to call it that, and then playing bass at the end. Sometimes it'll start with the bass line, then I'll make the accompanying music, the harmony, or maybe a little melody, and then I'll go back and either improvise a bass line. And like in that first video, that's sort of an approach, but it's kind of improvised, a take of bass playing. With the 2-bar stuff, same idea. It could be a drum beat that I heard a friend play, and I'm just putting the audio into Logic and recording one thing at a time. I don't want to be vague with it. The process is different. It just depends. One of the things I like to say is it's like, what do you want to eat? And it's like, I want to do something funky. And I'm kind of going in with, I want to do something funky today, or I want to do something like a Latin feel, or something with a pick, or a punk rock thing, or...
Got it. Yeah. So that's what I thought you were going to say. Yeah. Basically, for everybody else listening and watching, I guess the sort of like the takeaway here is that Ian wasn't like going to a website every morning. There's this incredible website on the internet somewhere, and it's just got lots and lots of these loops that are just all pre-done, and he was just slicing it and popping it on and like playing along with it. It was much more of a creative process, building that the track up to play along with, and then adding the bass to it. So goddamn, it's even more impressive than I thought.
It's on all those videos, the drums, I wish I was better at drums, so I'm using my friends, and I bought like sample packs of drummers and stuff, but all the piano and guitar, that's my hobby. It's like bass is my profession, keys, guitar, singing, that's just, I like doing music. And so it's fun for me, and it's a more, it's important for me to hear melody and harmony, or like kind of the structure, arrangement, and that influences how I play. And sometimes it is just a bass line and a drum beat. That's cool also. But I like to kind of have a more complete meal. And I think it's a better influence on how I might play.
Yeah, absolutely. And how long, like, I know this is like, how long is a piece of string question, right? But I'm sure everybody listening will be thinking, well, how long did it take to, like, ballpark create one of these loops to play along with? Not even taking into consideration the bass line, right? How long did it take to get the loops together?
I mean, I did one on Monday night for the 2-bar Tuesday, and it was like around 9:30 when I started. And then I have it on Instagram, like queued up to post first thing in the morning at like 12:30 in the morning. So it's like 3 hours from start to finish, which is a long time. But at the same time, I don't know what I'm doing with video editing. So sometimes that takes a while to just, I'm trying to sync the audio from Logic, and I'm using an old iPhone and just trying to get that video and audio to
just like eyeballing it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm slapping my bass like to match the audio spike, and then doing some graphics in a website called Veed. That's really cool. And that's where I had that guy dancing kind of superimposed in the background. And I just, it's fun for me. It's like, it's kind of a hobby, The pressure I put on myself is less when I'm trying to video edit, but I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just the whole
it doesn't
thing
come across like, well, I actually think sometimes the bug's a feature. I think that people can overly, and I think that this is, I guess, just an important thing to point out to anybody that's looking at Ian and thinking, wow, you built an Instagram following of thousands of people, and that's, will absolutely sort of like bring new opportunities into your life. As many, everybody finds out when they start building an audience on those platforms. So some people might be thinking, oh yeah, like I'd love to do that too, but they might have the anxiety of, but I don't know what I'm doing with video editing and stuff like that. And I just wanted to say that I think that in many ways, it's actually more authentic. If it's too slick, it like there's some sort of like, something's lost from the authenticity of the actual piece. And if you're doing it like Ian's saying, sort of like you're eyeballing stuff, you're just figuring stuff out on your iPhone, and it might be rough around the edges from sort of like a visual standpoint. I actually think that the bug's a feature. It actually adds to it. It doesn't take it away. But moving on, like, so you've obviously created these, and I want to ask as well, were you batching these at any time? You weren't. So you were like waking up and every day you knew, I need to do this thing, and it's going to take
literally
maybe
every day. And that became a challenge. It wasn't like the creative side was really rewarding, but just trying to find the time to do a video editing or recording it into Logic. And then some days it was just turn the iPhone on and just play with a metronome in the room.
Yeah.
But we all know that hearing a bass recorded through a cell phone speaker, and then everyone else is listening through a cell phone speaker, leaves a lot to be desired. And some days I just thought, hey, this is how I have to do it. I just wanted to say, I think it's important. I'm going to like paraphrase the Rick Rubin thing, but he talks about if you're going to do something, make sure that you like it, because whether anybody else likes it, it's like, who cares? You like it. And if you like it, someone else probably will. And that was sort of the whole point of the 2-bar challenge. It wasn't to be like the anti-Instagram thing, but I just you see people do like flashy stuff on Instagram to kind of grab your attention. And I just thought, I like groovy bass lines, repetitive 2-bar, 4-bar phrases. So it was a impulsive decision on January 1st where I just said, I'm going to do this for a whole year.
Oh, did you start it on January the 1st?
And it was just, it was like an Instagram story. And actually it was Ian Allison. It was on like day 2 or 3, like January 3rd, he messaged me and he said, you need to be posting these as reels, not just, I was just doing it as stories. And he's like, you're onto something here. And I said something like, I was worried about just posting too much. And to be honest, like worried about likes. I think anyone who says they don't care about how many likes their videos gets is kind of full of it. in the end was just like, there's no such thing as too much content. Just go for it. And so and of course, my wife was really supportive and just like, yeah, do this. This is cool. And because it took time. It's like, hey, I'm going to go upstairs and make something up.
Out of thin air, just go for it. Yeah.
And sometimes it was really quick, and other times I'm kind of striking out like a swing and a miss, or realizing, one thing I realized quickly, Scott, is that I love a dotted quarter note followed by an eighth note, something like, 1, 2, and 3, 4. And in the first week, I'm like, oh, that's like a tendency I have. So that was a thing also, thinking rhythmically, like to make sure I'm not repeating myself, which I noticed there was reoccurring themes in the first 7 days.
That is exactly what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, when did it become apparent that you had reoccurring themes? Like, how long did it take? Because I think that if it was me, it'd probably be about a week. I'd be like, oh, okay, I've got 355 more days to go. Like, what am I going to do? So it took you around a week, did it, start feeling those repeated themes? And then did you start consciously moving away from it? Like, what did you, I guess, sort of like broad question, as in terms of how it pertains to baseline creation, and we can talk about your process of baseline creation as well in a minute, but like broad strokes, what did you take away? What did you learn creatively from going on this pursuit of this crazy adventure?
It sounds kind of out there, but I was like hungry to do it. And that's what my practice was. So there wasn't really time to practice arpeggios or scales, but I was thinking, if I can just play the same thing for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, that's still good practice. I was thinking about consistency in tone, articulation, rhythmic timing, that type of stuff. That doesn't exactly answer your question. I remember our buddy Luke Anderson early on, he said something like, you should do a bass line where you don't play on beat 1. And I thought that was great. And then I started thinking about things like that. So maybe I do like a 1, 2, and 3. Maybe I like that syncopated rhythm, but I'm thinking, all right, well, tomorrow I'm not going to play on beat 1. Or maybe like some limiting, it's nice to have guidelines before you pick up the bass, whether you're practicing or trying to write. So I might think I want to do, there was one day where I just thought, I've always wanted to write like a surf rock tune. And then I ended up writing a little surf rock bass line and a melody. And now my band, the Morel Trio, we play it as a song, and I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but there wasn't necessarily like a step 1, step 2, step 3. Sometimes it was just an idea, or maybe I want to play just on my E and A string. Like, can I do something where I'm limiting the range of where I'm playing on the instrument? Or I want to start on a high note and descend the bass line. We're always playing low and going up.
So you started being more conscious of, okay, I wonder if I can do like just play on the E and the A, or descending bass line, or maybe starting on the 2, or maybe not starting on a root and starting on a 3rd, or can I start this on not the 1 and start on the 5th of the chord? So you were coming up with these like interesting like guardrails, right, to sort of like help you with the creation process.
Exactly. Or like I want a phrase that kind of starts at the end, or a line that starts at the end of the phrase. And one of those videos you showed where it's like 1, 2, ba-da-dee-ba-da-ba-dee-boom, and the thing is, I don't remember how to play any of these lines. Like, we're watching the videos and I'm thinking, I hope you don't ask me to play that, because I'd have to relearn it. I mean, it's happening in a day. But that kind of concept where it's like, I'll say like overloading a part of a measure. So it's like, I want a cluster of notes at the end of a measure and then really a breath at the start of the measure. So it's sort of like trying to paint the canvas a little differently.
Yeah. I'm just going to say out loud, I was just thinking about it. If anybody wants to learn some great riffs on the bass, highly recommend you go to Ian's Instagram and just go through these bass lines that he's created, because and maybe it was something to do with the creative process that led you to have all of these incredible bass lines, because they're really interesting. That's what I'm trying to get to. They're actually really, really interesting. And that's what caught my ear. I was like, oh, these are actually all really interesting bass lines that have been thought through, and to our earlier point, it's maybe sort of like because of the process, because of doing so many day after day, you don't want it to sound repeated. You don't want people to be like, it's just the same thing. So it kind of like really puts you under a lot of creative pressure to be able to do this thing that's like hopefully original every single time you do it. So if anybody wants to like learn some great bass lines, definitely go check out Ian's channel over on Instagram. And Ian, you can do that as well because you need to learn some of these bass lines.
I know, I got to go back.
Me too. Yeah.
So
me too.
One thing I'll say about those sort of guardrails conceptually, Steve Jenkins asked me, I was talking to him, maybe in February or March, and just kind of saying, not I'm in over my head, but it was like, I didn't think this thing through. I just said, I'm going to do this for a year. And Steve asked, he's like, are you thinking about tempo at all? And I thought, no, not really. But then I did start thinking about that. And maybe I'd look at the previous day and it was like, that was 87 beats per minute. And then the day before was 82. And I started to recognize there's tempo ranges that I'm comfortable in. And so then I would look for maybe, like I said, I would buy drum sample packs or find somebody on Instagram playing drums and rip their, steal the audio and play some music to it. And just think like, well, I want to do something at 128 or just like a totally different tempo range. Or if I've been playing something kind of a fast, funky thing, maybe I want to do something that's more of a ballad, like in the 70s. One of the other things that's tough with Instagram, the confinements of a 2-bar bass line. Because sometimes I'd write something and I'd want it to develop longer than 2 measures and just think, got to pare this down, or is this really just a 1-measure bass line? The rhythm is the same and the notes are changing. And then I started to ask, does that count as a 2-bar bass line? Or is that just 1 bar because it's rhythmically the same? So I don't mean to be too out there, but these are the things I'm thinking about. And
how long did it take you until you were like, to your earlier point when you said to Steve Jenkins, you were like, I think I'm in over my head. I think I've bitten off too like more than I can chew here.
Sometime in January. I mean, it was probably like day 16 and I'm just like, oh boy, I did not think this through, but it was fun. It was extremely rewarding. And that's why I said I was hungry for it and I was excited.
Yeah.
I wasn't excited about the sort of posting and editing side of it, but just the practice of doing it every day. I'm very insecure about my pick playing, my plectrum playing. It's something that as of 2023, I felt I couldn't even hold a pick. And that was kind of liberating to be like playing with a pick on, social media and just being like, I don't really know how to do this, but I'm figuring it out. And then to write songs and, you chose a song that I was playing pick and I'm like partially embarrassed because I'm like, it's not that good, but
I loved it. It's one of my favorites. Yeah.
It's a great way to challenge yourself. It's sort of like, I want to write a song and play with a pick, or I want to do palm muting or try the Jamerson thing, just play with one finger and put it more into a musical context instead of like playing a major scale up and down.
Yeah, exactly. Well, with that, I'm going to say, if any of the listeners or watchers are thinking about like, how to create bass lines, of course, everybody's thinking about like, everybody wants to know about bass line creation because it's much more than just playing roots. Can you take people through just to sort of like, wherever you want to go with it? If a student came to you and said, hey, I've been watching your videos, I'm really inspired by what you've been doing with the 2-bar bass lines that you've been putting on Instagram. Tell me about your baseline creation process. What would you say to that student? And I imagine you would say something. So let me just refine the question and try and condense, because the student would probably start like studying with you and then you'd slowly mentor them over weeks and weeks and weeks, right? But let's take 8 weeks and then try and condense it into 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like what's your creative process?
Well, several things. If we have a chord progression or a melody, that immediately gives you information to work on. I'm trying to honor the melody and see how I can sort of bob and weave. Once again, not trying to be too out there. I think another classic approach is listening to the drums, finding rhythms occurring within the drum beat and just adding pitch to that. I think very rhythmically. I think that is extremely important. So if a drum beat's just going boom, ka, boom, boom, ka, boom, boom, boom. Just match the kick drum. And I mean, everybody talks about that. It works. Play a root note. Doom, doom, doom. That's classic. Also notice that was 1, 2, and I ended up wanting to hit the and of 2 there.
Yeah.
But a big thing for me is just feeling the time. And so maybe I'm listening to the 8th notes of the hi-hat or the 16th notes, and I call that my lifeline. And so I don't feel like I have to match the kick drum. I'm trying not to just play anything willy-nilly, but come up with something once again that's like maybe complementing. I know I'm just doing random hand motions here, but if the kick's doing 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, we don't have to play that. Maybe you do, and then maybe there's nothing happening in that 4th beat of the measure. Maybe that's where you add your line. And then once again, you're overloading the end of a phrase and kind of hitting 1 strongly. Is that too out there? Or what do you think? I mean,
no. So what I'm hearing you say is I'm thinking rhythm first.
Always.
That's what I'm going to boil like. Yeah, I'm just thinking rhythm first. I'm not really thinking notes yet, or root notes, or triads, or arpeggios, or scales, or anything like that. I'm just thinking like, what's the rhythm going to be?
Yeah.
And that's exactly the same as me as well. Like, I think rhythm first. When it gets onto, and then also just to add into that as well, like I'm also thinking what kind of, like where the note's sitting on the rhythm. Like once I've made a rhythmic choice, to your point, let's say boom, 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 and I'm playing with that kick drum, or not, as the case may be, right? Maybe we are or we're not. But once I've made the rhythmic choice, I'm then concerned with like, where's it actually sitting on the grid? Am I playing like right up tight on, like in the middle, or am I, pulling back slightly on the back side of it and giving it more relaxed feel? That's sort of like mine.
Yeah.
It would be like rhythm, and then in terms of the grid, like where am I actually sitting on that grid? And like the style of music can influence that as well.
Absolutely. A big thing also that I didn't mention, and I know you feel the same way, is note duration. It's not only where your note is placed, but that's, I have a great friend named Jeff Reed, who's an amazing bass player, and we talk about that. Like a horn player can play a note and start quiet and ramp up, and they can sustain. It's like we get the initial attack of the note, unless you're using like a volume pedal or something, the note is probably decreasing. So where we end that is very important. And even just to use the example of boom, 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 to do that type of thing, if I grab the bass, I mean, are all those notes long? Everything just ringing? Or is it kind of like boom, pop, boom, boom, ka, boom, ka. Like I like to think of that snare drum on 2 and 4 as a pair of scissors cutting my note. And you want to talk about noticing repetition in your playing after doing this each day. A thing I learned within the first week was I don't play on 2 and 4 a lot. I like the snare drum kind of cutting the notes. So I'm kind of heavy on beats 1 and 3. But then having that awareness, I started thinking, maybe I'll do something where I'm actually playing on beat 2 or playing on beat 4, in addition to 1 and 3. It seems kind of obvious, but
yeah,
I'll tell you a funny story. There's a Duck Dunn quote that I misunderstood in my younger days. And he was talking about playing with Al Jackson Jr., and Al had such a laid back feel. They both did, or a relaxed feel. And Duck said something like Al Jackson told him, don't arrive to beat 2 before I do. But the way I interpreted that was, Al Jackson says don't play on beat 2. So for years I'm playing like R&B soul stuff thinking I need to rest on 2 and 4. And I reread the quote this year and I realized, I think he means just don't rush. Like make sure that snare drum, you're not ahead of the snare. And I was like, well, that influenced me greatly and perhaps I misunderstood. But that works, that note duration, that separation. I just love a long bass tone and then the crack of the snare as a pair of scissors cutting the ribbon it works. Of course, we're talking about stylistic stuff. I love country music and blues and rhythm and blues and soul. And so for that stuff, I think that works really well. If you're playing in a 90s alt rock tribute band, it's a different attitude. And like you said, where you're feeling the music, you're probably pushing the tempo a little bit or on top of the beat instead of laying back or in general, I just like being kind of right in the middle. I just want it to feel good. And then
Yeah.
I could go on and on about this stuff. I love it. I think
It's awesome, isn't it? It's endless. It's endless. And like, so in terms of like, so let's say we've got the rhythm locked down, then like, what are you thinking in terms of like, you know, notes, the rest of it? And I don't know, do you think it's like, maybe, well, let us know your overview of it. And then maybe we sort of like come up with like an example chord sequence of maybe like two chords or 3 chords or 4 chords or something.
Yeah.
And then you can talk around like how you think about your different options around those chords.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
I think that I definitely have tendencies that come from learning a lot of tunes over the years, and particularly in that the styles of music I talked about, like rhythm and blues and soul. If it's a major chord, a lot of times I'm always thinking roots and fifths. My first professional gigging experience was in a bluegrass band and then kind of like a country band. And so that I just can't get away from the roots and fifths. So it's like a lot of bass lines are going to have a root and a fifth. And if it's a major chord, I like the 6. So I'll just stay in C, but like,
Woo.
you know, now, okay, was that, ba-da-ba, 2 bars, da-da-da-da. That's a 2-bar bass line.
Yeah.
And it's like automatic 2-bar bass line. And then I'm happy with that. And then the challenge is like, can I play that for a couple minutes cleanly? Am I putting ghost notes in there that I don't need to put in there? That's something I notice. It's funny, I'm saying now, kind of stuttering, filling space. I'm better at it on the instrument of trimming the fat. Sometimes when I'm talking, I'll just throw in extra words. But this line.
Oh, dude. Yeah, me too.
Another pet peeve of mine, if someone's going, you know, this kind of clacking thing.
Yeah,
that's cool if you're doing a solo bass piece. I might get flamed for this one, but I think you need to be mindful of that. It's like, if the drummer is going to hit that backbeat, we don't need to smack the strings.
Play it again. I'm going to try and see if I do it. Let me play it?
Yeah.
I'm really intentionally not doing it. I want to go like, yeah, like, instead of, oh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I like putting a metronome on like a slow tempo and just hearing that as 2 and 4 instead of quarter notes. So that backbeat, I'm hearing boom, ba-doo-doo-dee-doo-dee, and letting that click be there. Doom, doom, ba-doo-doo-dee-doo-dee-dee-da-dum. Now, I mean, that's like my blankie, you know, that's my comfort zone, playing that type of bass line with, I'll call that a shape. Sometimes with my students, we joke, the shape. You know, we say it almost like it's...
Is this the shape? This?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
1, 6, 5, or any combination of that. But if it's a major chord, I'm probably putting a 1, 6, 5 in there. And then that can expand into... I mean, it's the major pentatonic scale, but I don't always think of that way.
Because you've got this one up here, right?
Exactly.
You've got, and then you just
connect it.
Add two notes. So you've got the shape. I love that. You've got the shape.
You have to say the shape, like it's like a
shape. And then we've just got 2 notes, and then we've got.
Exactly, man. And you can, this whole extended, I don't want to call it a pattern, but we'll call it a pattern. Like, it's all kind of there. So I'm happy with the bass line.
That bass sounds good, dude.
Oh, man.
It's weight. It sounds like each note has like a lot of weight behind it.
It's a
very
special instrument. So I'll try to add some variations just as a demonstration. But I like the bass line as is, and I really do like repetitive bass playing. And there's a story why I sort of morphed into wanting to play more consistent stuff. We can get into that. But just to demonstrate, if I'm going, what was the line? So I might overdo it with variations. That's too much for me. But just to demonstrate. Now that's kind of nice. Boom, ba-boo-dee-doo-doo-dum, boom, ba-boom, ba-da-dum. Well, to be clear, I'm like, I just want to go back to the initial idea, but I see all that as options, or the classic Chuck Rainey. This kind of 2 chromatic to the 3. Different tempo. And that would be like 1, 2, 3, and a 4E and a 1 and 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4E, and like I'm playing a rhythm cluster at the end of a phrase and then letting it breathe at the top. Maybe that's something I overdo. So then it's like, maybe I'll play a rhythm cluster at the beginning of the phrase. I've heard Jenkins talk about this. He says, like, let's say you're playing 2 measures of music and you're in a rut. He's like, just flip it. Put measure 2 as measure 1, measure 1 as measure 2. So,
interesting.
Although that wouldn't work very well in this example because I'm doing a pickup, but it's a cool concept. So especially if you feel like all you can play is the shape, maybe just experiment with your phrasing. Once again, I hope that's not too out there. These are just concepts. Real simple. Busy. Let it breathe. And 4, 1, 2. 2, 3. And then there's not, we got to be comfortable and confident that it's okay to just go bomb, rest, bomb, bomb. It doesn't have to be a million notes. And then I feel like I'm referencing all our SBL buddies. Danny Moe will say, if you only play, or I'm paraphrasing what he said, but it's like, if you're only playing a few notes, when you do something different, it really stands out. Instead of maybe just doing a fill every 4 bars. It's like,
that's 100% correct, isn't it?
I love that.
It's so right. Yeah. Like, you listen to that. I've got a few players that I really, enjoy listening to, and they'll play really, really simply, and then they'll just do something that's whereas there's other players that play a lot more, and you might not see the magic of what they're doing because there's just so many notes.
It's too much.
It's too much.
Trim the fat. Here's a great song for anybody watching and listening to check out. Grant Green's Cantaloupe Woman, which, not to be confused with Cantaloupe Island. It's called Cantaloupe Woman, and I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. And it's Chuck Rainey, and it's a boogaloo, and he's playing this really great groovy bass line. But then he starts to do some Chuck Rainey-isms as the song goes on. Some of these, some of that kind of stuff, or like a, I don't think it's an E, but he's just sneaking in a couple of his little things where you're sort of like, that's Chuck Rainey. I thought it was Chuck Rainey. Now I know it's Chuck Rainey, but he didn't do that at the beginning. It's maybe 2 minutes into the song and he puts in a little variation or a double stop, and it just really stands out. Now, so major, it does depend on the style of music, but a lot of times I am thinking this particular path on the neck.
I think it really helps to have these like patterns or these cells, little cells that we can use, because I'm like a very visually orientated player.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything. I think there was a moment in time where it was kind of like demonized in a way. Maybe like you lived through that as well. Where it was like, anybody that said patterns or something, it was like you were sort of like, you were shamed. My God, he's using patterns. And then I can remember emailing Matt Garrison, right? I'm not sure anybody anybody, like lots of people will know who he is, but if you don't know who he is,
You gotta
he's
check him out.
Jimmy Garrison's son, Matt Garrison. And Jimmy Garrison was an incredible upright player who played with John Coltrane. Matt Garrison is following in his father's footsteps. He's a bananas bass player, incredible. And I emailed him, and back in the day, man. And I asked him this thing about patterns, and he was like, "Of course I use patterns."
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, and from that moment on, I was like, "Oh, it's okay. We can use patterns, you know." But there was definitely like a moment in time, maybe, you know, people had written about it in Bass Player magazine or whatever. Like it was demonized to use patterns, kind of like licks. Like they're using licks and patterns, you know.
I like the term cell or pattern, and to me. I mean, I know you talk about it also, fretboard knowledge. I say it's like expanding our territory, just knowing what is available on the neck. Doesn't mean you have to play it all, and I try not to play licks, but I hear bum ba boo da dee doo da 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 da, like I could sing a line like that, and in my mind I'm visualizing how to play that. I'm hearing the slide. Ba-dee-da-da.
Yeah. Yeah.
Real quick, I have a minor kind of go-to thing also. And
please.
And surprise,
please.
It's also a pentatonic scale. And the shape is the same. Okay, let's do it in C. So we'll go to C minor, but I'm thinking still roots and fifths, but I'm definitely flat 7. That's like my go-to.
Yeah.
Maybe chromatic. And I'm playing that, and right away I'm thinking, I need to simplify. You know, I'm just making it up on the spot, but I'm seeing, we want to talk about sort of patterns and shapes. This I call a funk box. Then you have a funk box here.
Names it, yeah, the funk box.
And then it's like, guess what? This low funk box, you have it up here on the higher set. You know.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to just noodle, but that I am just going up and down now, but maybe I'll try and find something. Maybe I'll play here. I'll come up with a line like, I mean, how many lines sound like that?
Exactly. Yeah.
And what did I do? I did 1, 2, and 3. I can't get away from it. Dotted quarter note, eighth note. I live by it. Or maybe I'm going, I'll take that up an octave. Little slides or trills.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's interesting, I noticed I started tapping the bass because I'm trying to like fill in space, but to be confident to go. Also, in this shape, I'm seeing the flat 7 in the root. I'm seeing it there. That one's a little out of position, but can I tell you a little joke that I do, Scott? Is that all right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
This is my poor man's impression of you, and I hope you don't mind. I've done this on live class because I'm trying to teach these students some of these patterns and shapes.
Yeah.
So hopefully I don't fudge it too bad, but like, hey guys, it's Scott. How you doing? Exactly, man. There's a video of you playing with an EBS octave pedal and an Aguilar filter twin, and you're playing like one of your old P basses. That video blew my mind. Truly, I've watched
really?
That is my favorite piece of SBL content. I've watched it so many times.
Oh my word!
And
it's on that bass over there. I know the one that you're talking about. Yeah, because I can remember making that video.
And it's a reverse P, right? Is that right? Like this pickup is lower and that one's higher, if I remember correctly. But dude, I heard you play that and I was like, I thought like Stevie Wonder, like left hand key bass stuff, or Greg Fillinganes. And I was like, I got to get that. I mean, I'm not the best at it, but
there's a funny story about that.
Yeah.
That clip. So the funny thing about it is that line, I can remember playing it. Because I almost, do you know when you're playing something, you almost like fall off the cliff and you're like, oh, I almost fell off the cliff. I was like, and then I was like, oh, actually it's fine.
Fine.
But I can remember in the moment being like, whoo, that was close. But this is it.
Oh man, it's my favorite. There's a big run coming up. All of that.
Yeah.
All of that. Yeah, man. This part.
Going into that, it was exactly that. I was like mainly a Fillinganes thing, Greg Fillinganes thing, like a synth basy thing. But wherever I started it, I was like, oh, I've got quite a lot to go to get to where I know where I'm coming back in. So I was like, keep going. Oh, we got there. Thank goodness for
Extended
that.
phrase.
Yeah.
That I love that video, man. It's so good and truly was very inspiring to me. And just to bring it back to maybe a more intermediate or beginner level, yes, that there's a lot of left-hand inflections that take a fluidity, technique, staying relaxed. If you're tense, you're not going to be able to play it. But a simplified, I guess you're in D minor. It's all based around minor pentatonic.
Yeah.
Might be hard to connect this quickly, but to me, okay, check this out. If we're in F major, here's the shape, the original shape that I was talking about. We were talking about that a few minutes ago. In D minor, I'm playing the same shape. I'm just visualizing D as my root note, but
yeah.
If I resolve to D, now I'm in D minor, but I could play that same thing. I mean, and I have to imagine you think the same thing. That to me, I'm like,
yeah.
The secret is the major pentatonic scale, the minor pentatonic scale. It's the same, just how you're visualizing it and where you resolve.
It's how you're visualizing it. Yeah, it's how you're visualizing it, and I absolutely do the same thing. And then it's those, like, it's the cells, right?
Yep.
It's like it's that, you know, or the minor, or, and then what I like to do, just in case anybody's thinking, what does he mean by a cell? It's like a collection of notes that exists within a shape. So, like, let's say the C minor there. So we've got this, as Ian was saying, the box, the funk box.
The funk box.
And then you can play any of the notes in that box in any order or any note length, and it's all going to work. So you can...
Totally, dude. And then just thinking about like where beat one is and what the one, like what the root note is, and make sure you're referencing that. If in this particular one of the things I'll say is like, make sure we don't stay on the F, which would be the 4, too long, because that might, like, our ears might gravitate to thinking that's a different chord. But
yeah,
the E flat, that's your minor third. B flat's your flat 7. G is the 5. But if I go like, and I just let that ring, it's like, oh, we're at a different chord. So that's just one thing. To me, the F is a bridge between chord tones. F can take you to the 5, can take you down to the 3. That's my Scott Devine impression.
Woo! Nailed it, dude. Nailed it. And listen, if anybody's listening, they're like, oh, wow, but what about all of the other scales and all of the other, it's worth noting that if you know these pentatonic scales really well and these shapes or cells, whatever you want to label it, if you know them really well, like for the majority of like songs,
Yes.
the majority of them, you're going to be able to play with these two shapes, these two patterns.
Absolutely.
Over the majority of songs, right? That's just the reality.
And those, this pentatonic, either major or minor, it exists within, like, if you were playing a major scale, the pentatonic scale is part of that. If you're playing the Dorian mode, the minor pentatonic scale exists within that. And then maybe you start to add a color that makes that mode what it is. And now you're cooking.
Exactly. I used to, like, back in the day, I called it like harmonica layering. It's like understanding what brick to put down at what point when you're building the house. Your house being, your base identity, right? And first of all, you're figuring out where the root notes are. And then as Ian said, roots and fives. Okay, so you now know where the roots and fives are. And then maybe you're working on your pentatonics, right? So you build that. And then maybe after that, you're thinking about maybe your modes, your Dorians or whatever. But a lot of the time, it's easy in the, when you're learning an instrument like this to kind of just get distracted by everything. I guess it's like a great way to segue into like what you see. I wanted to ask you, so I maybe didn't mention this right at the top of the call, but Ian teaches we've got like a one-on-one coaching program called the Blueprint. And we've been running that thing for maybe, I don't know, is it 18 months now, Ian?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Solid 18 months.
Yeah, so it's like 18 months. And we've got an Ian teaches on, so Ian coaches individuals one-on-one through the SBL Blueprint. And then we've got Steve Jenkins, and we've got shout out to Luke Anderson. We've got Keith Pebbody. I'm missing people out, but shout out to all of the coaches. It's like somewhere in between one-on-one lessons and like music school. It's like in between that, because you've got the SBL, the coaching part of it, but then we've also like got curriculum parts of it, and then we've got assessments, and we've got it's a whole thing. And when we were planning this conversation, I thought it'd be really interesting because Ian's like worked one-on-one with so many students coming in through SBL. By the way, if anybody wants to check it out, you can just go to, I've got like a URL, what's it, SBL? It's the SBLBlueprint.com. So if you want to check out that coaching program, go to the SBLBlueprint.com. And then if you want to book a call, you can speak with the admissions team, and all of that jazz, or not jazz as the case may be, all of that funk or all of that Motown. But yeah, just go to the SBLBlueprint.com and you can find out more details there. And then if you want to book a call with the admissions team, you can, and then we can figure it out from there. But what I was saying to Ian when we were planning this call is like, and I'm like a huge believer that everybody's basically suffering from the same problems. We all have the same problems, right? Different on different parts of the timeline, yes. But it's fun for me to look at the great players of the past, the Marcus Millers, the Victor Wootons, the James Jamesons, and all of them greats, right? Anthony Jacksons, and just think to myself, all of them guys totally sucked at one point. They totally sucked. They were just like everybody else when they're just starting out. So with the students that you're working with, Ian, like, is there like a common thread that you see when people are coming in? Like, what do you want to share? Like, there'll be thousands of people like listening to this. No pressure. There'll be thousands of people listening to this. Like, I guess that what I'm digging for is, what are the common things that you see that people are accidentally like ignoring? And you're like, we need to look at this because everybody misses it. Let's jump into it. So that's kind of what I'm digging for.
First off, I love all my students. So anybody watching this, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. I think, I mean, the big headline, time and sound. And that's something I've heard Patitucci talk about. And when I heard him say that years ago, a light bulb went off, time and sound. Now, I was kind of an anti-technique guy for not for years, but I was just like, because you think, that player is really technical. And so there's part of me thinking, well, okay, he's technical, but he's not like expressing emotion. But in more recent, like in the last 18 months, I've come to realize that time and sound, you have to have the technique to be able to work on your time and sound. And I'm gonna be more specific. That could be fundamentals, basic fretting hand, like avoiding things like we talk about flying fingers, right? Not squeezing the living daylights out of the neck with your thumb, just a relaxed fretting hand. Ideally, consistent alternating with the right hand, economy plucking, or alternating nonstop. Now, I joke with students, sometimes it's a do as I say, not as I do, because I'll play a lot of stuff with my middle finger or my first finger, because I'm going for that sound and that consistency in tone.
Yeah.
So to get a little more specific about sound, I think sometimes everyone's so focused on scales or notes. And it's like, well, what are you producing? Is the sound you're producing pleasing? Just bringing awareness to that, because that's subjective. Like I've played a P bass since I was 19 years old. I played a P bass before I knew that was the cool thing to do. And then it became the cool thing. And I thought, this is great. I already play a P bass.
You were like, I freaking knew I was cool.
Yeah.
I've been waiting here for everybody to catch up.
Exactly. So for me, that's a sound that I really relate to. For someone else, it could be a 6-string dingwall, and that's great. But it's about like developing your touch on the instrument, your tonal consistency. So that comes down to working on articulations and dynamics, dynamic range, having that control. A big thing for me, going back into my own playing, I'm always trying to get better with my rhythm, which I think is what Patitucci's talking about, time. That could be time feel. It could be playing whole notes at 50 beats per minute, which I make everybody do. And everyone finds out it's harder than they think, because are we hitting the bullseye? Are we truly hitting beat one? I feel like a lot of times I'm kind of flamming with the metronome. And so being able to relax and be comfortable with that. I think the word I'm looking for is like feeling the beat, listening to a song, whether it's something we're using in Player's Path or maybe analyzing a Booker T thing, and being able to stay in time with the song or make a mistake and get back on the track. Some people, it's like they're hitting the space bar and starting back from the beginning, or they're getting off and maybe they've flipped the beat around. So beat 3 is now their beat 1. And so trying to bring awareness to that. Like I said, I'm not trying to my students are great and everybody's working really hard, but I think if we did a poll, they'd all be like, yeah, Ian's got us working on our rhythmic security. I'm not talking about playing Deantown, although that's a great goal. I mean, just being able to play triplets at 75 beats per minute and feel that subdivision and be secure in that. So then when you're listening to, say, like a James Brown groove like Cold Sweat, and we're hearing that syncopated drum thing, we're good. Like your heart is in time. It's not actually in time, but you're feeling the heartbeat of the music. You're feeling the quarter note pulse, that you're strong and secure. So if the drummer starts to maybe not play the snare on 2 and 4, you're not totally flustered. It's like, oh, that's cool. Like now the drummer can paint a little bit. And this goes back to the baseline creation. When I said like the hi-hat being the lifeline, once again, I'm getting a little conceptual, but we want to be so strong with our time that we can just hear something happening musically and be like, okay, that's where the tempo is, but we don't need a drummer going boom, bat, boom. But it doesn't have to be kick, snare, kick, snare. So fundamentals, playing simple rhythms in time, basic technique of fretting properly. I'm a big fan of the 1-2 fingering system. Some upright players call it samandal. And I really believe in playing that way down here, like first finger on F, second finger on F sharp, and then the kind of whole hand working as a support system to play the G, but then realizing higher up the neck, we got to go to 1 finger per fret, practicing that, but also knowing sometimes if you're going to play an F minor scale, you're probably going to have to do 1 finger per fret. So how do we play 1 finger per fret down here, stay relaxed so we're not getting pain? That's what I mean, fundamentals. So sometimes someone's trying to play Teentown or Deantown, and I'm thinking, look, you're basically on chapter 17 and we should start at chapter 1.
This is me, by the way. I've just been like nodding to myself as you've been talking, because I can remember really distinctly what I was working on when I started, getting into bass. and how it was just like so far removed from what I really should have been working on. And it really like just made the learning experience like way more painful and way longer than it had to be, because I ended up in situations where somebody would be able to, they'd hear me play and they'd be like, oh, good player. Ah,
Uh-huh.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'd get myself in situations where I couldn't function as a, what I would say like a true bassist. I was good at playing fancy sounding licks, but when it came to actually functioning as a bass player, I just really fell down. So if I could rewind the clock for myself, I would definitely, like, technique was a different, I would not, I was like obsessed with technique. It was a thing for me, but the time thing was just out of, like, I didn't even know about it. I just didn't even know about it. I was like, well, just playing time, And so if I could rewind time, I would have spent a lot more time on working on, time.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
pocket and groove and getting the confidence of time. And then in terms of sound, I mentioned it when you played as well earlier. When I listen to a bass player, I really like it when there's a certain, I know, again, this is like a weird conceptual thing that I don't know how to actually put into words, but I like it when there's like a certain weight behind the note. How does that even make sense? I don't know. But when they play, I'm like, oh, listen to that weight behind the note. You were playing earlier and I was like, oh, that's that weight behind the note. There's like this certain kind of like fundamental, like,
Yeah.
and you can hear it when it's played within the context of a bass line. And another person that I've listened to not so long ago, because I was checking out on the course on SBL actually, was John Patitucci, and it's him.
He's incredible.
And again, he's got all of this like horsepower, all of the horsepower, right? And all of the technique. But when he plays like a groove, there's some clips of him playing like a P bass as well.
Yeah.
Like, oh my word, there's just this incredible weight. And I think I'm not sure. I think the weight is a combination of tone and then placement on the grid where it's placed, and maybe kind of just the depth of the strike, maybe like how much they're put. It's like a combination of all those things. Have you noticed anything like that before?
Oh, I mean, Patitucci is top of the list for me. I just think the world of him. And an SBL plug, the Patitucci courses we have, some of my favorite stuff that's on the Academy. There's the technique concepts, which I think of more like kind of a lecture conceptual that he talks about, and that's fantastic. The rhythm one is great. There's a bunch. There's like 5 courses or something. They're all fantastic. But that's what I mean about like kind of consistency and touch. And it's exactly what you said. There's when he hits the string, it's like a gut punch. It's the best gut punch you've had.
Is that? Yeah.
And I'm going to kind of go back a second, but one of the things I see with all of us, not just students, it's ADD, social media. We're constantly barraged with new information. And so I see people jumping ship all the time, like something new. You call it like the new shiny object. It could be a new pedal. I feel fortunate that to be clear, I'm still working on my craft. That's a lifelong pursuit. When I was younger and really working on it, I didn't have, I mean, the internet existed, but YouTube wasn't a thing like in my early days. And I'd buy like a book, and I had this thing called Classic Funk and R&B Grooves. And I had the play along CD, and I practiced to that for like a year. And then I bought like an Ed Friedland reggae bass book, and then a book of his called Bass Grooves. Yeah. And that was sort of my education. And so it's just kind of like, all right, well, I guess I'm working on this reggae bass book for months and months. But it's through the repetition. Same thing of playing a repetitive bass line. You can analyze your time and sound, working on, I say it's like now where everyone's going to the buffet and putting every possible thing on their plate, and you're trying to eat too much. It's like, get some meat, get some potatoes, some peas and carrots, eat that, and then go get your dessert or whatever you want.
Yeah. That's where having like somebody guide you, really helps to sort of like pull you back on track.
Yeah.
Like I've been doing that recently. I've been working with somebody to help me keep on track with my playing. But then I also do it with business, right? With SBL, I work with people because you just drift because we're humans. We're just like naturally curious animals. We're curious. We're looking for things, like people were like wandering around like thousands of years ago. People got on boats, right? And set sail because of curiosity. Ultimately, they were just like they didn't know. They risked everything.
What's
they were like,
over there? Yeah.
Let's just do it. Let's do it. That's how curious we are. We're just like curious animals. And I think that right now, to your point, there's like a lot of distractions. Even probably more distractions than there ever has been. So it's even more important to really be considerate of like focusing on the thing that you should be focusing on. And what did they used this? This was great. It was a friend of mine. He was like, you need to be really comfortable with strategically neglecting things, making the choice to neglect it. Like, oh, you've just heard somebody talking about the fallopian flat 9 or the myxomatosis sharp 5, right? Whatever, right?
Nickelodeon. The Nickelodeon scale.
The Nickelodeon sharp 11, yeah, right? You need to be really great at being strategically, like just ignoring it, basically. Just pushing it out and thinking, yeah, great, but not now, because this is the thing that I'm working on. And sometimes it doesn't seem as attractive as the thing that you need to, strategically neglect.
I studied upright in college, but it's extremely neglected. And then I've had 6-string. I had a 6-string F bass. I've had 5 strings, and I got to a point.
Yeah, let's go. Let's talk about gear, but carry on.
The condensed version is I felt like there was a lot of work to just do on the 4-string, and then I got rid of my extended range basses, and so I do every once in a while kind of wish that I'd been spending the last 20 years working on my upright playing, because it's a whole nother beast, and I'd love to have that in my skill set, but that to me, it's like just knowing it's not accepting defeat, it's being smart. And it's just like, I don't have the time to invest into being a professional upright player. That's not an excuse. It's just like, I got a lot of work to do on the Fender bass. I just want to be as good as I can be on this, like this specific instrument. I want to get to know this thing like, it's a family member.
I did exactly the same thing, by the way. I had all of the basses, all of the strings, and then I had some extra ones on top of that. And at one point, I had a 6-string. So I borrowed a bass way back when I began, but then when I got my not my first gig, actually, maybe it was, my first pro gig, I think I was playing a 6-string on it. Like, nice. What on earth? Anyway. And then after that gig, I ended up going on a cruise ship, and I was working on a cruise ship. I was like 20 or something. I had this 6-string, and a passenger that was on the ship, we'd dock every day, and his family would go and, do the whole touristy thing, because we were at like a different port every day on the ship. And he would sit and play the grand piano in the ballroom all day.
Wow.
All day. Yeah. And normally what I used to do is I used to do a bit of practice in the daytime and stuff like that. And to begin with, I was like, oh, who is this guy in my spot? I'm the one that's practicing every day. And this guy's like sitting at the piano. And I was like, so I just like left it a couple of days. Anyway, so I introduced myself after a few days. I was like, hey, and he's like, oh, you're the bass player, right? And I was like, oh, yeah. And I was like, I've noticed you just playing every day. And he was like, this is my holiday. He was like, my wife, she likes to go and do the thing. He said, I just want to play piano.
That's awesome.
I got talking to him, and he was like, it turns out now I can't remember his name, but I do know that he taught at it wasn't Berkeley, but it was like either New England or Juilliard. He was one of those sort of like prestigious sort of like, music universities or colleges in the US. One of the ones where you're like, oh, that place. And he was like, oh, and he'd been teaching there for freaking decades.
Wow.
And I just sort of like got chatting with this guy every single day. I'd go up and I'd chat to him, and he was really gracious with his time, and he was super kind as well. And it was obvious that I didn't know what I was doing, and he was obviously like watching me every night thinking, this kid doesn't know what he's doing. And he was like, he said things like, hey, like, have you thought, because we were playing some jazz standards, like we'd play 5 sets a night. The first 2 sets were jazz, and then sets 3 to 5 were like pop stuff, right? Yeah. And he was a jazz guy, and he was like, like, and he was just kind of giving me like these little tips and stuff. Like, you might want to just sort of like concentrate more and just sort of like the root third, fifth, and don't try and make it sound like a bunch of chromatic notes too much, right? It's sort of like spoon feed me this stuff, and then it got to the point where he was like playing chords and ultimately like giving me a few sort of like harmony lessons on the ship in the daytime. And it was going through this process with it. And at no point did he say, look, kid, freaking bass has got 6 strings on it. You need to reduce that stuff down so you can actually like give yourself a good, good chance of learning what's under your hands. He didn't say that, but going through that process with him, I was like, oh, I do not know the bass. I don't know the fretboard. What did you say? It's about giving yourself more real estate,
expanding the territory.
Yeah, I didn't have any territory. I had like literally no territory. I was sort of like playing roots and like 5s and just sort of like winging it by the seat of my pants. Yeah. And going through this experience of chatting with this guy, it became very apparent. And then I can't remember the timeline of this, but I think it was when he was still on the ship. It could have been after he left, but I think it was when he was still on the ship. I took the B string and the C string off my bass.
Wow.
So I played the bass. And I think he was over in the Caribbean actually. And we were over in the Caribbean for like maybe 2 months. And I was on the ship for 7 months in total by the end of it. So I spent like 5 months playing a 6-string bass with only the middle 4 strings on. And I'd taken the B and the G string off. And it was for me, maybe not other people, but for me, it was absolutely the right thing to do. And I've always remembered that. And there's something, I have like a love affair with 4 strings, and I stray. And 5 strings are cool, 6 strings are cool. I do the thing, but there's not one moment in time where I've ever played a 5-string for a while and then I'll get back on the 4 and I'll remember it. I'll be like, oh, there's something about the reduction in real estate that also, for me, makes me feel really creative. It's like the guardrails have been narrowed.
Absolutely.
And it does something it ignites more creativity within me. I'm like, oh, actually. So now I need to, there's just something about it that I just really, really like. So like you, I have had the 6s and the 5s and stuff. One of my main basses are 5s, my F basses down here that I absolutely love, but I do have a love affair with the 4-string and specifically the P bass. Tell me about this P bass, dude.
All right. Well, Craigslist, find of the century. I found this in a Craigslist ad in like the fall of 2020. And it's do you have Craigslist in the UK or something like that?
No Craigslist. What do we have that's similar, Alan? What do we have? It's kind of like eBay, right?
It's like local sales. I mean, you could buy cars or like couches, or there's a music section. It can be a little sketchy. Have it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard it can be a bit sketchy. Yeah.
People are getting scammed. And so I saw this ad and I thought for sure it was a scam. And if you scroll down like to the depths of Craigslist, they'll show you ads in surrounding areas. And so this bass was, 2 hours away, and a very sparse ad. And it just said like 1966 precision bass or something like that. And I just was like, there's no way this is real. But I sent the guy an email, and even the email exchange was strange. And I asked him how much it weighed. I shouldn't go into the full story, but he sent me kind of a snarky email and was like, well, it weighs the way all basses do. Like, why would you ask a question like that? And I'm like, because basses don't all weigh the same. And I'm like very particular. Fast forwarding the story a little bit, I realized it's a real dude. We got on the phone and talked, and this was bought by a seminary, like a Catholic seminary in the 60s, to just have like sort of in the lounge. Like I'm imagining
No way.
People like in training to be brothers and fathers in the Catholic faith, they're probably playing cards and playing acoustic guitar. And this thing's just sitting in the corner for decades. The guy that I bought it from, he was training to be a Catholic priest, and he decided to leave the ministry. He wanted to have a family. He learned how to play bass on this in the 80s, and he asked if he could buy it from them, when he was leaving. And whoever's in charge, they're like, that thing's, they're like, that red thing's been sitting here for several decades. Just take it.
Blow the dust off it and take it.
He got it for free. And then original case, it's 100% original. And then he got married, had a family, and it sat in like under his bed or in a closet for a couple more decades. And then eventually he decided to sell it. His kids are grown up. Nobody wanted to take the bass. Nobody wanted to learn how to play the bass. And he likes Metallica, and he has a 5-string Ibanez. And so he wanted to keep his 5-string Ibanez and sell this. And he had it appraised, so he knew, its value, but he gave me an extremely generous deal. And I've played it every day for the last 4 years. And
incredible.
I mean, I just love it, man. It's my bass, I almost have trouble playing any other instrument because I'm so comfortable with this one. And I just want to keep, this is once again getting out there, but it's like, I just want to know how all the notes sound on this, where I put my right hand, where I put the tone, just like I have my voice on this instrument,
Yeah, that's what I think. Allison doesn't agree. Allison likes a lot of bass.
I know. It's the other side. I mean,
he's the other side, but I'm like, I like to, for whatever reason, I'm attracted to the one. I just want one bass. I just want one bass, even though I've got more than one bass, just in case anybody. But I've seen you divine with all of these basses. I know, I'm battling
about 20
it, right?
in the background.
I know. But I do fantasize about. I'm just like, I definitely. Who was I talking to yesterday? I was talking to Spencer at Lull, and I was like, and I was like, I fantasize about literally selling all basses except one. I fantasize about, maybe I should do that because of this sort of like the dedication. And to your point, this sort of like learning every single nook and cranny of the bass.
Exactly.
And I think to your earlier point, like it teaches you sort of like when there's something like you go on a journey together and it can influence the way that you learn and play bass. Like ultimately, I think that's, I believe that. And so I am I'm a one bass guy. But like for you, like what is the specific weight of a P bass that you like? You said that you've got you kind of like geeky out
about
on that.
8.5 pounds.
8.5 pounds.
It definitely needs to be under 9 pounds. And it depends. If it's too close to 8, I feel the neck dive. This one's is about 8.5, and it's got a little bit of neck dive, if I'm standing, but it'll mostly kind of stay in that position. I can just put my hands on it,
I think this is about 8.
Yeah.
And maybe 8.5, maybe a little under 8.5. It's got a little bit of neck dive as well. This one's got a thin body.
Yeah.
It's got, I don't know if you've like gone down that route. I don't know if Alinto always do it, but it's a 1.5 inch body. So it's a little thinner than a normal P-bass body. And they did them like that. Apparently, in the 60s, at some point, they were making tellies at 1.5 inch thick. And I'm assuming that they were just like, whatever, we've got this, we've got these billets left over for the tellies. Let's just do some. So there was like a run of P basses that were like 1.5 inches thick. And that's why like Alinto did like a hat tip to those, to those. So I'm not sure if they're all 1.5, but that's why this is a little light. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun. And what about the strings? We've been talking about that on the
I'm a flat wound guy, and these are GHS precision flats, and I love them. I don't know why more people don't talk about them. I think they're awesome. It's like the sound I'm going for. I just think they're great.
And you're strong arming all your students to play with them, right?
Yeah. There's a bunch of students that have GHS flats on their basses now. One thing I'll say, like, because I envy that Ian Allison can play so many different instruments. I actually have trouble playing different instruments. Like I'll play jazz basses and I'll play the G string, and it's like we're talking about like that time and sound, and I feel like the G is really loud, or it's almost like I don't have dynamic control over the instrument. It's kind of strange. And I do have a couple other basses. I have an old Mustang that I really like, but I feel like I don't know it. Like there's times I play it and a note's just crazy loud or quiet, and I'm like, what is going on here? I need to get familiar with the pickup and how it reacts. And I bought an old Harmony H22. It's like this hollow body, and that thing, more than any other instrument, not including this P bass, is the instrument that I like immediately bonded with. I've had a lot of basses, Scott. I mean, I've probably had, no exaggeration, maybe over 100 basses in the last 20 years.
Oh my God.
Not all at the same time. I told Ian something like that. And I was like, I had like 85, and he's like, you have 85 basses? I'm like, no, I have 2. But over the years, but they come and go. And this one is here to stay. And the Harmony is here to stay. And even the Mustang, it's a great vintage Mustang. There's nothing wrong with it.
Have you rotated through a bunch of P basses?
So many basses that sometimes I forget, and maybe I'll see an old video and I'm like, oh yeah, forgot about that. I'm not proud of it. It's just, it's part of the tonal quest. I mean, I've had P's and J's, bunch of Mustangs, Lakelands, 5 strings, F basses, exotics, stuff that I forget. I love John McGinney. McGinney's great, and he used to have M basses. Now it's McGinney guitars. I've had some of his, and all these instruments were great. It's just like, it's almost like, I've heard you talk about finding Excalibur, and
yeah, dude, yeah.
Sometimes you sell an instrument.
That's your Excalibur.
This is definitely Excalibur. And sometimes I'll sell a bass and I'll regret it. And I'll message the guy on TalkBass or Reverb that I sold it to. I'm like, hey, can I buy that back? And they're always like, nope, it's not for sale. I mean,
okay, tell me 2 things then. Tell me the one that got away that you shouldn't have sold, and tell me the one where you were just like, what was I thinking? Like, you got a flying V bass or whatever. So yeah, the one that got away, and the one that like you went a bit crazy about.
There's several ones that got away. I had 2 different Mulan 5-string jazz basses that I wish I hadn't sold. I bought a Mulan in like 2015, and it was a Burgundy Mist 5-string. It was awesome. And I sold it because I was just like not comfortable on a 5-string bass. And then every once in a while I'm like, yeah, that bass, and now I would have had it for almost a decade. And that's in Canada, and the guy won't even respond to my request. I've asked him several times over the years.
He's just sick of you like messaging him. Yeah, it's like he's saying to his wife, "This Ian guy's on the phone again."
So that one I would say for sure. I mean, it's embarrassing to say I can't remember all of them. I mean, on a somewhat of a sad note, but maybe the person out there will see this. That bass I played in the Stair Steps video was was really beat up. That was a Fender Highway 1 bass that my parents bought for me when I was 19. And this is a bummer, but I sold it during the pandemic because a musician and needed money. And I always wonder where that bass ended up, because I would like to have that back. Not to be all a bummer, but that's
would you buy it? Would you buy that back? Yeah.
Just for posterity. I mean, that's the bass I cut my teeth on. I played that throughout college and my first professional experiences, and I mean, I played that all the way up. That was like the bass I'd come back to until about 2020, and then I don't even know if that bass was that good of a bass. It was just the bass that I played a whole lot. It was my bass, Well,
if anybody knows where it is, or if you've got
come on, hit me up. It's got,
give Ian a shout on.
It has
DM
Michael Leake's signature on the back of the headstock, because I did a bill with Snarky Puppy before they were really big. They came to Baltimore. My band opened up for them, and I asked Michael to sign the bass, and he didn't want to. He's like, I can't sign your bass. And I was like, come on, man, like, please. That was like 2011 or 12. So if anyone has a Highway 1 P bass and the finish is worn off and it's got a signature on the headstock, hit me up. I'll buy it back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the wacky bass is like, honestly, it'd probably be the 6-string F bass. You know, I got into six
Six-string
for a
F bass,
while.
yeah.
That bass was awesome. The action was so low. You play an open C string and it's just a rattlesnake.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what I was doing on that thing. My right hand was a mess. I was still anchoring my thumb on the pickup. I wasn't like doing floating thumb.
Oh,
So I was getting a
okay,
ton of
yeah.
hand pain because I'd be reaching for the C, you know, the B's here and just the shape of my hand. Really, I was having like an injury. And that's what led me. I started watching Todd Johnson and seeing how he kind of floats. And I love Alfonso Johnson. He's a big influence of mine. And I always thought his right hand was really unique. And I just started trying that and kind of adapted a hybrid of a movable anchor, floating thumb. It's getting pretty nerdy, but I'm kind of grateful to play these extended range instruments because it made me reassess how to play pain-free in my pocket hand.
I think there's always something to learn, isn't it? Even if it's like a negative thing, like you learn something, like you reflect on it and then you can adjust and move forward. Man, awesome. Before I let you go, by the way, need to talk about amps as well, because we've never talked about amps ever. I've got no idea what you do for your amps. So what are you playing through?
A couple things. On all that Instagram stuff or what I'm playing through right now, that's this thing called a Tonecraft 363. It's a tube preamp, and I love that. It's like
I've seen them, yeah.
That thing's amazing. I use that every day. I like old Ampeg stuff. I have old like a B15, a 60s B15. I had the SB12, which is the brother of the B15. The thing is, that's all more studio stuff or quiet environments. So what I've been using in the last year, and I'm really happy with, is the Trickfish stuff. It's fantastic, man. I know you've used some Trickfish. I got the 3K, which is their like insanely powerful amp.
Oh, did you get the monster? That massive, yeah.
I love it so much. I feel like, and I don't want this to seem like an ad, but for me, the Trickfish is like, it's giving me the sound I want and the power and the volume. If I'm playing with two guitar players and a drummer, very clean. It's like a clean platform. Sometimes I'll bring, I have another tube preamp called the Arkham Oracle. There's a theme here. I like Ampeg stuff. So that Arkham is a B15 preamp EQ, and I can drive it. So I'm actually pushing the tube and getting some like a little bit of hair, a little bit of overdrive. And I like putting that into the input of the Trickfish. So I have the power and the clarity of the Trickfish with this kind of Ampeg preamp sound going.
I've seen those Arkham Oracles. They look gorgeous.
They're
Did
great.
you see what's the guy called that runs it?
I think his name's Micah. He built one for Mitch.
Yeah, the B15 thing.
I have to think that I had a little something to do with that, but you know, Mitch can disagree with me. Mitch and I are buddies, and you know, he was asking
it's
about
like more, it's like a B15, but more powerful, isn't it?
Yep, it's like 100 watts. Well, sorry, a couple of things. Mitch had some custom build where it's 40 watts. And I think he did some different EQ points, but it's got like B15 DNA, perhaps. Yeah. Mitch, sorry if I'm speaking incorrectly. And then on Mitch's box, he's got like a dummy load, so he can use it as a DI, but to actually get the power tubes and the signal. But then Micah does make 100 watt B15 tube amplifier. I'd love to have that. But the Trickfish, man, it's great. And I'm using, I have a 112 of theirs I like a lot. If I'm playing more Americana or Boogaloo kind of stuff, I bring the 12. That's great with my band, the Morel Trio. Or if I'm playing rock and going hard, I have two of their 4 8 caps. So it's an 8-8 rig of 8-inch speakers. And that's like, okay, guitar players, you want to bring it? Let's go. And I got the amp to back it up.
It's like you're ready to have a fist fight with the band. Come on, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Incredible. Okay, so where can people find you? And obviously, if they want to find out more about studying with you, the SBLBlueprint.com.
Yep.
We've got Ian, we've got Jenkins, we've got Luke Anderson, we've got Keith Peabody, all of these incredible
Rubano, Matt Rubano, Craig Strain.
Yeah, Matt Rubano. Yeah, Craig Strain. Shout out to Craig.
Simon. Simon King.
Simon King.
A ton of guys. Gary Jackson. Paul.
Yeah.
Your buddy Paul.
Oh, yeah. Paul Geary, yeah. Like there's a ton of coaches working on that. Anyway,
sorry for anybody I'm forgetting. Yeah, you can.
I know, I do apologize if we're missing anybody out, but it's thesblblueprint.com if you want to apply to speak to the admission team over there or find any more details on it. But if they want to find you, if they want to come and stalk you online, Ian, or in real life, actually,
yeah.
Where did they go online to stalk you, and where did they go in real life?
So the website is under repairs right now, or under, what do they say, constructions. But there is iantrusheim.com, although it's in the works. And then Instagram. Instagram's probably the most current thing for now, just at Ian Trusheim IG. Yeah. And then I'll be trying to get like a newsletter together and up my social media presence and all that kind of stuff. But I'm kind of a fish out of water with that. At the end of the day, here's what I'll leave you guys with. You can always rely on this. I've said this at many wedding gigs when there's a party planner freaking out. I just say, hey, I'm just the bass player. And then you point to the singer or the band leader, said, that's the person you want to talk to. I'm just the bass player. So sometimes, with this web development and everything, it's the same thing. I'm like, it's not my skill set, but I'm working on it. I'm just the bass player.
I'm going to try that with Lisa, my wife. I'm going to dude, I'm just the bass player.
Put your hands up. Hey, I'm just the bass player. I'm sorry.
I told you to get this from the shop. When you went to the supermarket, you said you'd buy some cheese. I'm just the bass player.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to see you playing live as well, are you playing live? Are you out and about?
Yeah. So I have this trio, the Morel Trio, and really trying to do more with that band. We're actually getting into the studio in a couple weeks. So hopefully some tunes coming out and trying to play a couple shows. I'm in the Baltimore, Maryland area, but we're doing DC and trying to branch out a little regionally. And I do a pretty good job on Instagram if I'm just playing like a jazz trio gig or with Morel Trio or some of the other artists I get to work with. I think for now that's the spot. And I'm hoping to, like I said, up my online presentation in the near future.
Yeah. When are you going to be doing the album?
Well, it's December 14th. So next weekend. Wicked. Might not be a full album. We're trying.
Are you going to be like sticking on Spotify and all of that as well?
That's the plan. We're going to just try and do a couple singles for starters. You know what it's like in the studio. Time always goes by quicker than you anticipate. So we have a ton of originals. Yeah. We got, 15 plus originals, but we're trying to get 3 done and then a couple other, if time permits. But it's all live. We want to do it old school. It's just 3 guys in a room, some room mics, no overdubs, no click tracks, just guitar, bass, and drums, listening and reacting to each other.
Mega. Awesome, dude. Hey, thanks for hanging out, man.
This is amazing.
Take it easy, everybody.
Scott. Cheers.
Bye.